My name is Jason Leahy, Executive Director of the Illinois Principals Association. Thank you for joining me for this special IPA talk. I'm very fortunate to have with me IPA board member, who is our Diversity and Equity Chair, Denise Gamble. So Denise, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time here with me to talk about the important work that we have going on here as an association. And I know you and I have been trying to do this for a while, so glad to finally do it. So thanks for being with me.
And thank you for affording me the opportunity to engage in this work.
Well, it's definitely my pleasure, and I'm grateful for you, Denise. But before we really get into it, for those that don't know you personally, would you mind just sharing a little bit about your background, particularly the work that you've done in school leadership over the years?
Yes, I am a Chicago native. Been in Chicago my entire life. Only left for about a year and a half to do some advanced graduate work in Wisconsin. I'm from the south side of Chicago, and it's important to say which part of Chicago you're from, but I am a South Sider.
Well, you got to tell who's the Cubs fan and this White Sox fans, right? Isn't that part of it? I know there are other things, but that's, I know, a big deal.
Yes. So since I'm a South Sider, I must go with the White Sox since I'm a South Sider.
It's a good year for that, for sure.
I attended public school throughout my educational career, and I stayed in Chicago to do my undergraduate work, and I did that at Chicago State University on the south side of Chicago. I started out majoring in elementary education, and I always had a desire to work with special education students, even as an elementary school student. So I continued with that focus, but I also became interested in preschool. At that time, it was called preschool handicap. So it gave me an additional opportunity to focus not only just on the elementary level, but the preschool level, and take a special focus on children ages 3 to 5, in addition to going all the way through the 8th grade level. And I also did a master's degree at Roosevelt University, and I've done advanced graduate work at Loyola University. I've ended my career, my last 19 years, I was a principal of 3 elementary schools in Chicago. And I had total years of service close to 35 years. And currently I'm a leadership coach with IPA, and I still do special projects with the Chicago Public Schools.
Yeah, every time I turn around, Denise, when it seems like you're getting out of one special project, they keep pulling you back in for something else over there.
Yes, but it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, well, it's nice when you can do that and be like, you know what, when it's not fun anymore, I can just step away from it, right? That helps out a little bit. Yeah, you bet. Well, appreciate your leadership, obviously, from your years of service there and the work that you continue to do in CPS. Grateful for your mentoring and coaching work of both new and veteran school leaders, of course, and the work that you do with the association for that, and most especially grateful for your service on the IPA Board of Directors as our Diversity and Equity Committee Chair, which you are the very first one of those, the inaugural of that. And we definitely want to get into that and how that came to be. And really the focus for this IPA talk is to discuss the diversity and equity and inclusion work that the association has been doing, particularly since 2018. But before we get into that and really give the membership an update of the great work that's been going on both at the state level as well as within the regions here, and then some national work that you've been doing, I'd really like to hear from you because you've provided great leadership with this and really helped clarify, how we as an organization need to be thinking about diversity and equity, equity, and inclusion. And you take rightfully a broad strokes or broad brush type, whatever is the right way to clarify that approach to this, which I think is good for us to think about it in this way as a state that is as large and really diverse as Illinois, which has a very large, urban center in Chicago to, lots of suburban school districts and communities, and then some very rural communities as well. So I think the way that you are looking at things is very appropriate for us as an organization. So would you mind just sharing your overall thoughts and philosophy for that?
Well, initially, it was important for me to make sure that I clearly articulated what diversity meant, because like anything else, depending upon your personal experiences and your perspectives, we can define diversity, equity, and inclusion differently. So for me, it was critical that I made it clear that I was not just talking about race, because initially when you say diversity, the first thing that we all want to think about, that it all has to do with race. And it's not just race. It could be gender, age, religion, sexual orientation, socioeconomic level, and any other ideologies that we may come in contact with. And then when I think about equity, for me, that means being what's right and just for all. And inclusion, making sure that everyone has an opportunity to be part of the experience, and not just being there, but having a voice, so that we are all heard and that we can all make decisions together. So, but making sure the first point is that we look at diversity broadly.
Yeah, you bet. Which has served us, I think, as an organization very well here, as we have been more engaged, more focused, and delved deeper into this critical work. And, one thing, when you mention inclusion there, Denise, it brings to mind for me another IPA talk that I just recorded here with Dr. Michael Allen. He is a current school leader up in the Evanston School District. And he just wrote a book, co-authored a book here about a year ago with his brother Gilbert, called Brotherly Love, and tells their just wonderful story of love and perseverance and things for them through their childhood. But one of the things that he talks a lot about is humanity, and seeing people's humanity, particularly kids' humanity. And I'm very interested and fascinated in that, and for us continuing to explore that, so that we don't get into this position where we're treating people as others, where we don't give them agency and treat them with the humanity that they deserve, which I think is important, and sometimes easy for us not to do, especially when you think about some of the things within society that we're dealing with right now. So Denise, we've had quite a journey here, really since 2018, as you and I have been reflecting as in preparation for this IPA talk, of when, though the association has, I guess, dabbled is maybe the right way to talk about it, with diversity and equity efforts over the years. It was 2018, I think, for us is a watershed moment with regards to this, when we really got serious in starting to turn the attention that was needed around this. And so I know one of those happened up in your own region, where you are, up in the West Cook region, which was, you guys held a focus group of school leaders and started having this conversation, which was then informative to us. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Well, back in October of 2018, West Cook region did host a focus group with school leaders. And this came about from prior conversations that we, members of West Cook, that we had been having really for several years. And not just myself, but other members, see things that we saw that were happening within our school districts, but also within the organization, specifically IPA. Because at the time, and I still am, I'm the membership chair for West Cook. So it gave me an opportunity to attend the membership training in Springfield, and just being able to sit back and see how the organization worked. And I realized that when I was attending those meetings that I was the only person of color in the beginning. So when I would return back to my region and give reports, these were conversations that I engaged in, and also wanted to make sure that our entire region had an opportunity to engage in and to see what we could do as a region. So that resulted in the focus group back in October of 2018. And from that focus group, we did share the results with the board, the IPA board. And one of the main things that always tends to come up is that marginalized communities tend not to feel welcome in professional organizations such as IPA. And I do want to make it clear that it's not just IPA. It's large educational professional organizations and non-educational professional organizations, that it can be a struggle to actually make sure that diverse groups feel included within the membership and the organization. So it gave us an opportunity to get feedback from other individuals. But that was the main thing that kept coming up, that membership did not feel like they belong. They may attend a meeting or two, and it did not feel welcoming. So they tended not to come back or want to be actively involved within the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that feedback was very important for the IPA board of directors, and was, I believe, heard at that point in time, because some other things were also kind of in the works simultaneously, because while that focus group punctuated that for us, Denise, I would say, from this chair in my position, it's something that I've been starting to hear more and more all the time, and knew that we needed to do better. And so some other things that happened then, right around then, was, number one, Daniel Booth, who is now the superintendent of Carbondale Community High School. At that time, he had been principal of Carbondale Community High School. Some interesting things professionally happening for him at the time, and was on our board as our legislative chair. He had then moved to the position of the Carbondale Elementary School superintendency. So he had to step off the IPA board, but because of just Daniel's talent as a school leader, and just for those that don't know Daniel, he's an African-American school leader in Illinois, does an outstanding job, very well known. But he was kind enough to come in and facilitate a session at our conference for underrepresented, marginalized. Let me just say it that's a little easier for my tongue this morning, Denise, but marginalized school leaders to come in and just have a frank conversation and talk about some things that the association and the profession overall needed to be hearing in order to appropriately support our school leaders. And then also at that meeting of the board of directors, or that conference rather, in 2018, the board made the decision to appoint and open a position for diversity and equity chair, which we did that in October, had the meeting, moved away from that, but then had to start thinking about who was going to fill that position. And really the best person to fill that position was right there in front of us, Denise, because you happened to be on the board as the retired chair at that point in time, but felt like, because of your work, as an educational leader broadly, but then especially with the things that you had done in West Cook, it made sense to have you move into that position, which you were kind enough to be willing to do. And so the board appointed you officially in January of 2019 to take on that role. So I'm just curious about kind of your thoughts about that point in time and what was going through your head when you were coming on and taking on that new position.
Well, and that's interesting that that we're talking about that particular point in time, because I think I had only been the retired chair for maybe about a year or so. And when we had the discussion as to whether or not I would be interested in moving over to the new position, it was like, wow. And it was nothing that I ever thought that sometimes when we do things, we don't know what we're getting into, right? And it was nothing that I had planned, but I was also excited about the opportunity to continue to do the work and to be able to have a larger platform to speak with the board, not only the board, but the representatives from all over the state, and making, again, going back to how I define diversity, but making it clear that I'm not just talking about race. And I think once I had an opportunity to share that, it did become clearer. And this work is all about changing mindsets and looking at our own individual biases. And this is something that I've shared with you and other board members, that I also struggle with my own biases. You know, it's not something that, you know, we can just go out and do, or that I just go out and do. I have to also reflect and to look at my mindset, because again, it comes back from our own personal experiences that we've had. You know, I grew up in Chicago on the South Side in an all Black community. Mm-hmm. And I did have teachers in the public schools that were Black as well as white. But in terms of my contact with other races, basically, there were not any until I went to college. And then also when I had an opportunity to go to Wisconsin and work on an advanced degree. So I was really excited about being able to do the work. And then when we went the next step further with the strategic planning, that each region would have a diversity and equity chair. Mm-hmm. I was really, really thrilled about that. But I also had to make sure that the message that I was sending out, so that the membership understood that this position was going to look very different within each region. And that's something that I still constantly put out there. There are opportunities for diversity, equity, and inclusion within each region, but it is going to look very different within each region.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and as you and I have talked a little bit about, is when we think about ultimately, why do we do what we do? You know, as an association, there's no doubt it's to serve the membership and support them, support what's happening organizationally, but what's in the profession, but then ultimately support the profession so that we can support our kids. And, you know, when you think about it at that level, our society, I mean, globally, we live in a global community now. We're very mobile, have the opportunity to go and experience a lot of different things, as you talked about from your own experience, you know, growing up at the South Side of Chicago, and then, you know, what it took to experience other races, but it happened because of what you did. I could look at that for myself similarly, Denise, and growing up in rural Pike County, Illinois, in a 99.8% all white school. and really not experiencing other races, other cultures until I went to college as well. So that path was a little bit similar in that way. But what are we doing to make sure that our kids are prepared for that? I think is really important. So you referenced our strategic planning effort. That's an important process here for the association. It is something that drives what we do. It's not just a plan that we put together just to say that we've done it. So that happened in the summer of 2019. We based it on our key elements of culture, systems, and learning, and this work sitting within our culture domain. And the key goal, which I think has been extremely influential in the association, of making sure that each region had its own diversity and equity chair position. And so we started that really then thereafter, right, and worked to make sure that happened. And then that group started meeting. And I just want to emphasize too, Denise, that when you and I were talking through what was going to be the work and primary focus of that group, obviously we wanted diversity and equity chairs to partner with the region leadership and with the members at the region level to think about various ways to engage, to provide professional learning or opportunities for conversations around diversity and equity. But for us organizationally, we needed to be thinking about what were the types of mindsets that we needed to have when it came to our IPA team, the staff, because when we were into that, we're still underrepresented here as an IPA team. Still have a lot of work to do, with the diversity of our staff here, and that's a constant focus for us as we're hiring now at any time. But with the group, in addition to that, wanting to make sure that we did a good job of looking at our legislative positions and representing school leaders appropriately there, and having that group review those, which they've now done. Looking at our professional learning offerings, which has been helpful to us. Though I do think we were doing some things when it came to the types of trainings we were doing and who was delivering those trainings. It's been really important for us to have that group now support that work. But it's more than just putting on region events for us, or that. This group really is important to having lots of influence over the organization. And so, for me in this position, I'm grateful for that, because it gives us additional perspective, different ways of looking at things. And then when we have policymakers or others say, who are you talking to when you've come to the decisions that you have about this? We can say it's, this group of people that have helped us vet through why we are doing what we're doing, why we're thinking the way that we are, so that we're representative of the entire group. But, so as you and I discussed, Denise, thinking this through of what's been transpiring for the organization over the last couple of years, we get a little bit caught up in that COVID fog, right, of what exactly happened when, particularly when we look at 2019 to 2020. But, what I would say with 2020, we know the pandemic hit, but we knew conversations related to this were happening, and diversity and equity were starting to get those positions filled. But then in May of 2020, we know what occurred there in that spring with the murder of George Floyd, and that definitely put an intense focus on this, and really understandably and rightfully caused us to ramp things up. But I'm grateful for what we had done prior to that to be in a better position to support our school leaders with those kinds of conversations and things. But I'm just curious if you could reflect for us, what was happening in regions, and what were the kinds of things that were taking place at that point in time, and then moving forward to today, because we've seen some really great quality work happening, not just here at the state level, but we've had some regions do some outstanding things to support this conversation and support school leaders through it.
And going back to something that you said initially, Jason, the Diversity and Equity Committee it definitely gave us an opportunity to look at other things that were going on within the organization and looking at them through that equity lens.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, I think, was pivotal in terms of how we looked at our role as a committee within the organization. And little did I realize that how important having those region representatives, how important it would be. And I was just really floored with the talent of the chairs from each region. I mean, some outstanding school leaders. Yep. And it was as if everyone was, wow, we were waiting for this to happen, or we needed this to happen. So when we had our initial meeting back in August of last year, the initial meeting, and that came as a result of going out, and I had an opportunity to talk to the South Cook region and at one of their meetings. And that was one of the things that was put before me. Once we put these individuals in place, will we have an opportunity to meet collectively the chairs from each region? And I really had not thought about that piece at that point, but it made sense. So fast forward, because I think I spoke with them in January. And then with the unfortunate incidents, the murder of Floyd, that we had so many things in place already that it made it easier for when we went into that August, when we had our initial meeting, and talking with the representatives. Everyone was eager to get started. And one point that I do want to make before it slips, that what we do professionally within the organization, within our regions, ultimately will impact what we do in our schools. And we need to make sure that we look at that big picture. So once we started meeting back in August, the ideas were, was just flowing. Yeah. And I also had to make sure that I was making it clear, not only to the board, but to the region representatives, again, looking at that broad definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of the first things that committee wanted to do was to conduct a survey. Because of COVID and we were doing everything via Zoom, that did take a little bit more time than what we had anticipated. And we ended up getting the survey out, I think, late November. But we didn't get the response that we wanted, the full response, but we got enough to know what people were thinking about. Mm-hmm. So we took those results from that survey to determine some of our next steps. So one of the things that we also wanted to do, we knew that the education conference had been rescheduled. So that February, the following February, so we're into 2021, that gave us an opportunity to share with the wider membership exactly what this committee had been doing, right? And we were really, really very thankful and excited about the response that we got when we did that participation for one of the sessions. And as I said before, and I can't say it enough, the talent that we have within the region chairs, it's fantastic. Some very talented people. So also that October before, West Cook did a panel discussion. And it was our belief that we wanted to get from as many school leaders as we could. So we had on the panel a representative from the Archdiocese, from North Cook. We went all the way up to Kishwaukee. We also wanted to get input from an assistant principal, and also representatives from Chicago Public Schools. And that response, the response from that panel was really, really excellent. And I think it also gave the other regions ideas in terms of how they can look at their particular area, their own context. So we started seeing other panel discussions, roundtables, series of, for example, Lake Cook did a 4-part series. Mm-hmm. There were regions like Corn Belt and CIV that went in together and did presentations together. Having speakers come in, and for example, Marcus, Dr. Beelan, having him come in and tell his story. But and one region did a diversity hiring panel. So everyone took it and took the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion and ran with it. And again, it gave all of us an opportunity to see that it will look different within each region in terms of what we want to do. But it's important to survey your region, make sure you're listening, and that everyone has a voice, so that when you present these programs, right? So we were really excited about that as a committee. And the committee meets roughly every 2 months, and looking at what we can do differently and what our next steps will be.
Yeah. Well, and no doubt that the work is continuing. I think, Denise, the great part about the committee being together is the idea sharing, and the fact that we've even seen regions now get together and present various opportunities as a unit. 2 or 3 regions may join up. I mean, that's been the power of Zoom, right? With the virtual opportunities, which has been terrific. You know, and I will tell you, when I think about the work that the association is doing, you know, even more broadly now, when we think about what needs to be happening for ourselves, and we put up the mirror to reflect critically about this organization and how we make sure that we are living up to what we're trying to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion out in the field, and reflect that appropriately here. You know, as we look at our strategic plan moving forward, and what the goals are, that as we now have done a pretty good job of having diversity and equity chair positions in all the regions. I think we have just a couple that still need to do it, so we're going to work on that. And I'll just make a point too, Denise, that you know, as we've talked about with that position, those positions of diversity and equity chair positions at the region level aren't just for, you know, leaders of marginalized groups. These are for anyone, you know, white, black, brown, whatever. If these are people that are serious about being engaged in doing this work in a serious way. We've seen that, and that's been really a nice thing. And I think we'll continue to learn and evolve there. But something that we're talking about here constantly internally as an IPA team, and in particular our field team, as we think about supporting individuals at the region level, is how do we have leaders of color move into these important region leadership positions, like our state director and our region director positions, so that we can see those individuals take leadership on the IPA board of directors, for example. And as I referenced before, something that we've been doing more of here as we have opportunities for hiring positions at the IPA office is we make sure that we do everything we can to diversify the team when the opportunity presents itself, which, to our credit, and I'm grateful for this, we don't have a ton of turnover at IPA, which is, I think, a testament to the association, the support of the board, and the work that we do here, but we've got to make sure that we're doing it when the opportunity provides itself. So I do want to mention, because I before we wrap up here, I do want to talk about two other things: your work with NAESP and the work to come. But I know that you and Allison Maley, our Government Public Relations Director, are working on diversity and equity report. Well, we'll spell out some of the things that we've done with some more specificity. So that will be something we'll be looking to produce in the weeks and months ahead. But you are engaged, Denise, not just here at the state level, but also at the national level. So you're working with the National Association of Elementary School Principals, Diversity and Equity Task Force. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about what you're doing with that group?
And again, this was something that I didn't see coming, but it's been a wonderful opportunity. The NAESP, the National Association for Elementary School Principals, this is actually the second time that this task force has been activated. And we started meeting July of last year, the task force on race and equity. So I represent Zone 5, which is Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky. And we meet, initially we were meeting every month. Now we're meeting every other month. And again, we're looking at the same concerns that impact school leaders across the United States in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So only a couple of months ago in July, the national conference was held here in Chicago. And we were able, the task force members did a presentation. It ended up being standing room only, but it gave an update in terms of what we've been doing this past year. And we've done a lot with looking at implicit and explicit bias. We did work with Project Implicit. We also talked about equity audits that can be done within schools, and a lot of school districts were already engaged in that work. But we're also looking at having those difficult, critical conversations. And one of the things that I focused in on was that belonging piece, and not just students feeling like they belong, but also educators that work in our school districts. Because as we know, many school districts have a very difficult time in terms of hiring the diversity piece, making sure that the workforce is diverse. And that is a struggle in light of the fact that it's not that many people are actually going into education now. So those issues not only relate to us nationally, but those are still issues that we are looking at here in Illinois. So we are continuing to progress with what we're doing in terms of the task force. And again, we're looking at how we can strengthen principals in their work with equity. And that's one of the main things that the Diversity and Equity Task Force, our guiding question is, how can IPA support school leaders in Illinois through their work in diversity, equity, and inclusion? And as time goes on, I'm sure that we will tweak the question, add on, etc. But that is our guiding question. So being able to be a voice for Illinois, Kentucky, and Indiana on the task force, that has definitely been a highlight of my career.
Yeah. Funny, Denise, how when good people doing good work, stuff just kind of falls in your lap there. It's how that stuff goes.
Yes, indeed.
For sure. Well, let me ask you this, Denise. as we kind of close up here, particularly here for IPA, what do you see as next for us, and particularly the work that the Diversity and Equity Committee will be up to here in the year or so to come?
So making sure that number one, that we have representation from all the regions, that we continue to look at that broad definition of diversity. One of the things that we will be discussing is doing a diversity and equity summit in the near future.
Yes.
But also making sure that we support the other diversity and equity chairs within the regions, and also making sure that we collaborate with the membership chairs and the legislative chairs. I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out, that we're not just out there by ourselves. And I see those three chairs working together in order to do this work. And as we look at the strategic plan of IPA, the culture piece and equity falls up under that we make sure that we keep the vision and mission alive for the organization as a whole, as well as our individual regions. Yeah. And we know that we have a long way to go, right? This is just the beginning of this journey. And it's a difficult journey, but doing the work together, we will be able to accomplish great things, because Illinois, and I say this all the time when I meet with my NAESP colleagues, that Illinois, we're doing great things here in Illinois through the Illinois Principals Association.
Well, appreciate that encouraging thought, Denise, here. Plenty of work to do, maybe never be done, but boy, it'll be meaningful and relevant and be worth remembering as we work through it. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you for saying yes years ago when the board called to take on that diversity and equity chair position, because it's been impactful for us organizationally for sure. So again, my name is Jason Leahy. I'm the executive director of the Illinois Principals Association, joined by Denise Gamble, who is a retired CPS principal, does mentoring coaching work here for IPA, but for the purpose of this conversation, most importantly, is our diversity and equity chair on the IPA board of directors, and we're sure grateful for it. As always, if there's anything that IPA can do for you, don't hesitate to give us a call, or you can check us out on the web at www.ilprincipals.org. Take care.